Hey, Tyson here again with Modal Digital. In this tutorial, we're going to continue off where we continued off last time. We're dealing with, of course, the users section of our CRM. So our goal with the user section is basically just to get get everything set up so that your administrator can add users, view all the users, which is where we got to yesterday. But now we want to create separate views for specific users. So that we can add those ones to the database, or sorry, that we can view them once we actually click on them, and then do other things as well. And I'll go through kind of what the scope is or the goal is for today. The last two lessons that I did, tutorials, were fairly long, about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. I don't want to do them that long normally. I'm not, being completely honest, I'm not great with video editing. Nor do I have the patience for it. So I'd rather just kind of sit there and code. So we'll see how this format works out for me, but we'll create a short list of things that we want to do within a particular section. And then as we have ideas, as we create this project out, I will add them to the list as we go along. But I'll log in here. All right. Go log in. Perfect. Okay, so actually we'll go back to our main page here. This is the entry point, of course, of the app. I go manage users here. Can add the user. We add a little bit of JavaScript there to open and close this particular form, just to give it kind of a cleaner look. I will turn this into an actual modal later on once I've decided if this page is going to call for any additional modals. Like, for example, maybe we'll want to do a quick, like maybe if I right click on this one, I'll want it to show a modal with basically the basic information of that particular user. So like maybe the last time they logged in, things like that. So, but let's take a look at our basically what I want to get done here today. We'll continue in this users view. We'll create a particular users view, an instance of a user. And we'll want to be able to do things in there like edit that particular user. We'll want to be able to delete that user. We'll also want to make that user, say, inactive. Like say, for example, maybe a person is going to take some leave off of work, and we want the ability to not give them access to it, but not completely lock them out. So we can disable the account. And also too, by disabling the account, we can lock them out of the account, but we can still view information like maybe what estimates they've done, things like that. It of course depends on, how much functionality we add to this or how much you add to onto this in the future. So one thing we touched on in the last tutorial, of course, was our database seeder. And we basically set it up so that every single time we refresh our migration, which I prefer to refresh my migration as opposed to, say, adding particular fields on the go. Laravel does provide that with Artisan, the ability to say add specific fields within a table. But I would rather just add it to my main, basically to the main file itself. And I'll show you what I mean here by that. If we go into migrations, so like here, instead of, say, like for example, like we did with role, we had created the schema here for our table. We ran the migration in Artisan originally, and so instead of basically adding a string, as a separate migration, or adding a field as a separate migration, I just added it here, and then I refreshed everything. And the reason I refreshed everything here is, it's really easy for us, especially if we have a database seeder, because then we can put in, our credentials for developing, like our username, and we can also put in, say, the password for that. So what I want to do is basically create a database seeder, or add to the current seeder that we have under the users table seeder, to basically add some users. So every single time we refresh the structure of our database, I want all of that stuff to be automatically loaded in there and to be the same every time. So it'll make it easier. We know the form works. We know the ability to submit new users. All that functionality is there. because we built that out in the last tutorial. But in this situation, now every single time I make modifications to the database, I want to refresh all my migrations and then run my seeder, which will make it easier for myself. That's a lot easier for the actual environment. So that's pretty simple here to do. We'll go user create. Actually, before this, I want to add one more field because we are going to refresh everything in here. But I want to basically add that active or inactive user, okay? So we will, just to start, we will default them as a, we'll default them as an active user. Whereas in the future, what we would do is once they log in for the first time and set up their password and everything, then we would set them as an active user. That's definitely one option we have there. So we'll do this here. I'm going to use tiny int. We don't need a large integer value in this situation. And we're just going to basically do, is active, and we'll create the default here as 1. Okay. Simple enough, easy enough to do. And now we'll go back to our users table seeder. Let's get rid of this stuff here. We don't really need this right now. Not our routes. Our users controller, add user. We don't need that one here anymore. Users.blade. We'll hold on to that one still as well. Okay. So we'll create a few users in here. And we'll call this one, oops, so we'll say for the name here is going to be say John Doe. Actually in here, let's do one other thing. Let's do is active. I'm going to want to do this because, I'm going to want to do this now. Because once we actually figure everything out with email, sending the token, things like that, I don't want to find, oh, hey, there's an error, it's not working, and then it's not working because I didn't set it to active or something. So we'll automatically do that with these 3 in here. Okay. So name, we need to do email. We'll make the emails really simple, like John at modcall.com. Email role, in this case, is just going to be basically a user. Now, I should mention there's other ways to do this, like with model factories, which is something we might touch on when we build out, say, an estimating part of the CRM, where we can add a whole bunch, and then it basically chooses from a database of names, and depending on what should go in that particular input or what should go in that particular field, we can create rules and then pull from a large database of sample names and whatnot, which is a great plugin for Laravel for doing this kind of stuff. So, but right now I want to manually do this because I want to basically remember who I put in so that we can access them from the user's point of view. So we don't want this information to be random. So is active, and then password. We're going to get really creative here with our passwords, and everyone is going to have password as the password. It would probably scare us to know how many people actually use password as their password. All right, that's just a side note. All right, name. We'll say Jane Doe. Email equal to jane@doe.com. Sorry, we'll actually do mod call. The role for Jane is going to be user. And then is active is going to be 1. And password is going to be password. Another thing we're going to add to this is people putting in basically passwords with greater strength, greater password strength. So numbers, maybe other characters, letters, combination of capital letters, things like that. But for now, we're going to keep that all pretty simple. But I'll show you how that can all be done in a later lecture when we're a lot closer to, say, rolling this out for from production to actual production. So okay, last one we'll do here. User create and name. It's going to be Jim Doe. It's like the whole Doe family works here. Jim@modcall.com. Role for him is going to be user again. That's got to be in quotes, of course. And then is active. Probably another faster way to do this would just be to copy and paste from the other ones and then change a lot of that, because 3 of the fields here are going to be the same every time. So, but that's kind of what you're doing. It's kind of what you get when you do these tutorials extemporaneously, I suppose. And you know what? It gives you a chance to enter it in alongside me as well. So it's not that bad. Okay, so we'll run our artisan command here of migrate refresh, and then we want to seed our database at the same time. Oh, we got problems. TinyInt does not exist. You know what? Let's do that as okay. So my problem is tiny integer is what it should be. All right, let's give that another go. Okay, perfect. So let's go. We'll open up our terminal here. Select all from users. Okay, so we can see everything was put in. No, I made one mistake here. My bad. So I didn't hash them. So let's go back to our users table seeder, and we'll do a little copy, a little paste. Okay. Okay, let's give it a go again. Oops, not what I want. So PHP. Okay, we'll go back to our MySQL. Perfect. Okay, so everything is working in there. We'll actually test these out once we activate a user's view. Kind of like we had say a dashboard for the administrator. We'll do that for the user as well. And before I actually get to that, I may do some other things in there, like create a nicer sidebar, things like that for our actual menu system here. But otherwise, we got all that here. So every single time I want to make modifications to my database, I can refresh it. My username, email, password's all going to be the same every time in there. So okay, so we're happy with that so far. So we got this out of the way here. So I'll start this. We reseeded our database. Everything works out fine there. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a particular user's view and then deal with our routing to that view. So first of all, let's start out with our routes. We want to, so doing routes is actually pretty easy here. What I'll do is I'm going to divide basically this into a few different groups here. Because we're going to have, say, put requests for editing data or updating it. We're going to have delete requests and then, post and get. I'm just going to do basically post in a section, put, edit, all that. So in here, we're going to create a get route that's going to contain our, say, admin user. And then we want to reference that user by that user's ID in here. So that's pretty straightforward. We're going to use the user's controller again. And to show that particular user, we'll create a method in there called get user. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And then we'll say the name of this route. Should we provide a name for this one? No, we're not going to provide a name in this situation, which is fine. Okay. Now we'll go to our users controller. And just like we have this method in here of get user, we'll create that method in the user controller itself. So I'm going to put that up here. Okay, user, so the name of the method that we pass through in our actual route there. This is going to take two parameters. Be under request, we need to use request. And then ID. And this corresponds basically where it says ID here. If we go back up to our routes, this corresponds to what we have here. So you might have some routes with say more than one input there. Like for example, maybe if you're building out a blogging system, you might have the user ID, and then you might have say articles, and then give the ID of the article that they created as another one in here. But whatever you put in here between these curly braces is going to be the actual name of your variable. Okay, so that makes sense. And just to verify that we've got that, let's data dump that, and we will data dump ID basically. Okay, so let's test our route out. What we need to do here is admin user, and then we'll do a number basically. Okay, so you can see that properly. That's properly receiving the variable from our GET request. Okay, we can enter in a name there as well. Of course, in our database, because this is going to be referencing a specific ID of a user. Names don't work, so I mean we can add some regular expressions in there to ensure that it's only numbers that are actually valid in there, and then we can spit out an error if it's not a number. Okay, but we shouldn't really have to do that. We might do that, say, with an API more so than our built-in web application here. So let's do this. All right, we'll go to users. Okay. So we know we already know we could pull the information that based on the ID. So one thing we need to do now is we need to create a view that we want to send them to. So return view. Two things we need to do here. So in the view, we need to specify what the main page is going to be. And what we'll do down here is back in our, where's our resources? Resources, views, admin. We have index users, and then I'll do one which is just singular for user.blade.php. I might refactor this later on. I don't know. We'll see. So user.blade.php. Okay, and then in this one we want to go at extends, and we want that to extend the layouts app.blade.php. So admin.layouts.app. Is that correct? Yeah, that is. So that brings in our main HTML file. And then we want to add content in here. Sorry, I don't want to add content. We want to add section with the name of content. And to start with, we'll just put something in here like, this is the user. Okay. So we'll save this. Our view in here is going to be admin.user. Fair enough. And you know what? We want to pass some data in there as well. And we'll call it user data. And we're just going to pass in basically the variable from the GET request, which will be ID. And comment this, make sure you comment this out as well. Okay, let's do this. Perfect. Okay, so this is the user shows up in here. So this is the user one. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll look in our database and we'll actually find that particular user. So in here we're gonna call this the user, and we're gonna make this equal to user. I'm gonna say find or fail, and we're gonna pass in our ID here. Okay, and then we'll call this user. $sign user. Okay. So we'll save that. And now where this one is, it should print the information of that particular user, which does not, because I have to go back to here and change that to user. Okay, let's give that a go again. Perfect. Okay, so it's all showing up in here. So now that we have the data within here, we can now start pulling aspects of this out and create a proper view there. So why don't we do that? We'll continue basically with creating our view for this page. Probably build out a modal or something like that. We'll see what we have time for in this actual tutorial. That way. So okay, so let's go take a look at our users.blade.php. And I'm just going to copy most of this here. To here. Oops. So now all we need to do, we're just going to have to get rid of some of this stuff in here. We'll leave the cards in themselves because we'll want to display specific information about that particular user, right? So current users, let's get rid of all this here. And then we have our sidebar in there as well, so that's good. Okay. So under card body here, let's start adding information about this particular person. So let's do this here. Actually, we'll go card header. And we'll say user details. Okay, so some of the information we're going to want to pass in about this user are like their name, their email, what their role is, are they active, and that's about it. So pretty simple for now, right? So this is an H5 in here. We'll say name, and then within our curly braces, we'll provide user dash name. And let's copy and paste these down. Some of the other aspects in there were our email. The role. And then the name, we'll say active. And then we'll just put a so if it equals 1, then we want it to show as yes. Otherwise, we want to show it as no. They're not actually active in there. Okay, so let's refresh this and see how this looks for us. Perfect. Okay, so the user is active in there. That's fantastic. Role admin. So it's a role of admin, email, name, all that information there. So next thing I want to do in here is I want to add a modal for this particular user. So some of these things are going to be hidden. They're only going to be activated if we click on a button. So we're going to add some JavaScript for this, which like we did in our actual users.blade.php, we're just going to create a JavaScript file, which I'm going to put under users anyways, as long as our file doesn't get too big, I don't think I'll split it out from this users file. Actually, no, I'll have to do it in a separate one because if some of those elements aren't on that page, yeah, so I'll have to do it as a separate one, which is fine. Okay, so we'll go back here. Just gonna take care of our indenting here one more time. Okay, and then let's do some modals in here. The modal-conf container. I'm going to do some inline styling and then move that over to a style sheet, same as we did with the JavaScript file. And again, that's just for the purpose of making every part of your application lightweight, not having too many extra things to load. I don't need to put an ID in here, but we'll go class, and then we'll go style. And with a modal, I want it to basically take up the whole page, and the background's going to be grayed out or blacked out, but we're going to have an alpha channel to show some transparency of what's in behind. And then, if you were to click, say, within that grayed out area, then it would close the modal as well. That's definitely an option for us. It's definitely an option for us here. So this is going to be a position of absolute. With absolute, we're just going to define our top. We don't need to do left or right or anything because unless we specify top, it's basically going to appear after the other elements. Width is going to be, we'll say 100 viewport width units. So that'll be the full width of our viewport. Height is going to be 100 VH there. And what else do we need? Background color. And then with our background color, we'll do RGBA. We have to do RGBA because we need to have a transparency channel in there. And black is 0.5 is what our transparency is going to be in there. So let's give this a go, and we're good to go. Okay, so it grays it out there. So we're happy with that. So one thing we are going to have to do though is basically set the z-index back, and we'll do that with our JavaScript file. Actually, we'll do that with our CSS file first and foremost, and then we'll change it with our JavaScript when we click on the button, and then we'll change it back when we click to say close out of that particular modal. But let's go to our let's create our actual modal. We'll do this again in a card element. As you can tell, I love card elements. But actually, what we should do here first is we should do dot row dot column dash md dash sm. Let's see. I only want to take about half the screen because it's going to be a small form. We don't need too much in it. So let's do column small. We'll say 6, and then we'll do an offset of 3 in there. So that should center everything in there to start with. So that's good. I'm also going to give this one an ID. Do we need an ID for this one? No, should be good. Okay, so card and then dot card dash header. In the card header, we'll just put in, we'll say edit. So let's do this. Edit the details for, and then we can do username. Perfect. All right, and then we'll do dot card dash body, and then we'll put a form in here. I'm not going to have this form direct anywhere quite yet. And the methods we'll use post, but we are going to spoof that basically. CSRF. Okay. So dot form dash group label, and then the label is going to be for the name, for name on here. Yeah, that'll be fine. So for the name, and then we'll say user's name. Okay, we're going to input text class is going to be form dash control. The name is going to be equal to name, and the value here is going to be equal to $user dash name. So that's automatically going to pop up in our form. This way, let's just make sure everything's looking good for us so far. Okay, yeah, so that's fine. Let's throw a little margin on the top of this card body. No, top of the card. We'll say MT-5. That's another Bootstrap class. Okay, good. So we're not right there at the very top. And we can do transition effects and stuff too. I'm not going to do that in this one. Transitions, in my opinion, get a little irritating when you're trying to be as efficient as you can on a CRM platform. But you can see in here our value of Tyson Lennon is automatically put in. And if we put in some other value, we can change the name for that particular user from there. So, okay, so let's do the rest of this. Mad copy paste skills here. And we should have, do I want to change the password in this? I don't think I want to change password in this. I don't want to change. All right. So we just need to basically do name, email, role, and then is active. Okay, fair enough. So name, email, name, role. You know what we actually need to do there is, this needs to be a select field. So let's do that. Control is going to be role. Option value. So we're going to have a value of user in there, and that'll be user. We don't want to default anything in here. Actually, we do want to default some stuff in here. Admin, and then we're going to add another one in here, which is going to be the same as we see here. It's going to be a little bit redundant because either they're going to be the user or they're going to be the admin. but we can clean this up later on. It's not really an inconvenience anyways. So the value here is going to be user-role. And then we'll say, again, in there, $user dash. And we could use some standard PHP functions to like capitalize the first letter of this as well, which is always an option. So function we're going to use here is US, UC, like uppercase first, right? So that should look good. User admin, and then is active. Is the user active? So again, in this situation, we're going to need to do a select in here. The name on that is going to be is active. Don't need an ID for this. Because we're only dealing with basically two for now, two different states for is active. It's either going to be a true or false or 1 or 0. We can create maybe some more complex if statements in here for that. So let's see here. If actually, let's do if else. Okay, perfect. Okay. So if is active is equal to 1, then we will put out a few options in here with a value of, so is active is 1. So we'll leave it as 1 if they don't want to change that. That'll be the default value. So the value is going to be 1. And then we're going to say basically yes for the option, but this is going to be defaulted in here, and then do option value 0, and then this one's going to be no. Otherwise, we're basically going to reverse these. And the reason I'm doing this is so that when it actually shows up, we don't want to accidentally change one thing and then end up changing the status of whether or not they're active. So we're going to go Control X, Control V. There's actually a shorter way to write this. So let me show you what that shorter way would look like. So user is active. If that's equal to 1, no, sorry, my bad. We'll do it this way, just so you can compare them side by side. So option times 2, value is going to be 1, and then the value here will be 0. We'll put in yes, and we'll put in no for this. And then within our if statements, we will do if, we'll say $user dash is active. So if it is active is equal to 1, or we could just say is active, that would be fine too. Then what happened here? Oh, that's really weird. Okay, so that works. Then we want to print out basically, this is the default, right? This is the default value in here. And if it's 0, then we want this to print out default as well. Okay. So let's comment this out for now. I'll show you how that works. So this just ends up being a lot shorter, right, for us to actually write. Unexpected. Views, tutorials, user unexpected. Is it unexpected what? You see first. Okay, where is it in here? Yes. PHP echo user activity. Okay. I don't see the error. Do you guys see the error? Path render. There we go. Okay. So that fixes that problem there. Because in the shorthand, I didn't specify the else part of that, and you can see that defaults to yes. Now let's come in here for a second and clear all this out. No, because we don't need that. So we're in good shape right now. If is active equals 1, this gets defaulted here, so we're in good shape. Okay. And going back here, user role admin, admin, user admin. So this is kind of, you can see this is redundant here, but we definitely don't want user to show up first, because if we actually submit this, then it'll change their access to user, and that's going to mess up a whole bunch of stuff. And you know what? I mean, even in this situation, we might even want to specify a rule that if this person is a user, if this user is an administrator, we cannot remove that administrator role using this method. We might want to create another. We might want to create another way so they have to. So it just ends up being far more deliberate for them if they're going to downgrade this particular user to an admin, or we'll just basically disable the ability to change roles if it's coming from that particular person, that particular admin, or the person that's logged in and using this currently. So enter the details for this. Okay. So the last thing we need to add in here, of course, is a button to submit this. So we'll say button.btn, btn-primary, and we're just going to say update user details here. And let's actually put in button, dash block. So we'll look at that here. Okay. Up in here, I do want to do one other thing in our actual header. I want to create a span that floats right. Okay, and then I want to go that next, and I want to just in case somebody opened it by accident, they can either click on the gray part or they can click on this X itself. And I'm going to give this an ID of basically close, edit, details, modal. I'm pretty explicit when I do name things. It basically saves me a lot of writing of actual comments in the file, because the names of methods and things like that are pretty straightforward, pretty understandable that way. So let's go back in here. All right, that's on there. Let's do, let's change up our cursor. I'm gonna have to come back and refactor a lot of this anyways. So cursor pointer, and then we want to do the color here as red, just so they can easily do that. And you know what? Let's throw a little B tag in here. There we go. It's a little more pronounced here. So we want it to close when we click on it. Let's add a button in our card here under header. No, back up here. And put a span in here of .btn-sm. And we want to give this an ID of open, edit, details, modal. Okay, and then in that span, we want to put edit, and let's just put float dash right. Okay, so we can't see that in here yet, but we'll be able to see that here shortly once we actually add our JavaScript file. So let's do that right now. We'll add our JavaScript file. If you remember last time, we went to public, JS admin users. We'll go a new file, user.js. All right, and then we'll add this to our actual file. Copy this, and go over to user, go outside of our section tag. We'll drop the S on that, and then let's close this. Okay, opened up the user file there. And that should be good to go there. Now we can start. Writing things in there. So let's open this up one more time. Let's open up our console. Let's refresh and open up user file. So you can see our JS file was loaded in there correctly. Okay. For now, well, let's actually go over to our app. Let's do this first. We've got our CSS. Let's add a folder under CSS called admin. And then we'll add the new file in here of .css. Definitely, there's going to be some refactoring to do afterwards as our program grows here. But I mean, that's part and parcel with development of any kind of a web application, even one that's, say, better thought out than what I'm currently doing right now. So now let's go over to our template file, and let's add in our template, so layouts. I'm going to make this one a little more, I'm just going to say styles. .blade. .php. Okay, now let's go to app. Let's go to our app.blade.php. And we'll put our styles up here. So we'll say at stack. At stack. It's going to be styles in there. And then, so we don't need our styles.blade.php. We don't need this one anymore either. User.blade, we'll go app push admin.layouts.styles. And then in there, we're going to put our asset, which is going to be css/admin/user.css. And push. Okay. Now, so we have our user.css, user.js. This is almost starting to feel like working with Angular, having it all in the same folder hierarchy, whatever we want to call it. Okay, so let's clean this up a little bit here. Modal-const, we need to create I'm going to split my screen up here. Okay, and so user.css, so we need to go dot. And we're going to copy these. I'll just I'll just copy this. It's like midnight where I'm at right now, so I am getting tired. Okay. Top, width, height, background color, and actually I want to put this to static, so it doesn't matter if they scroll the bottom part of the page or not. Like if the content goes past the bottom part of the page, we're not going to be able to scroll through. And then we also need to change the Z index. And we'll give this like -1 for now. So now we want to get rid of this because this would override any styles we have in our style sheets. Anything in line would override that in CSS. What did I do? Done messed up. That's fine. We'll go absolute. Oh. Actually, we'll leave this out of the way. Let's do this. Well, actually, this is a much better way to do it. Say position absolute. And then we'll go display none. Okay. There we go. Okay. So that makes way more sense now. Now for our actual user.js file here, we need to create some functions. I'm gonna put this in a snippet of code here so none of these actually run on top of one another. But let's say document.onload. This way, let's do let modal dash cont. What I actually want to do here, I'm going to give this one a particular ID. So this one is going to be the edit details modal. I hope this doesn't mess you guys up with the double screen there. Much easier, more efficient way to work, of course. So that is why I'm going to do that. So edit details modal. The reason I'm doing this as an ID and capturing it as an ID instead of a particular class is because I don't want to reference, say, an index of modals. Because if this grows and say I add more modals, and I love working with modals in CRMs because it makes all the content look that much cleaner. We don't have to have as much information on one page, but things can be displayed very quickly with modals. But it's not information they might need access to every time they look at that particular page. So we'll say let edit details modal. And we'll say edit dash modal. Okay. And so that's going to reference that. Now, one thing I want to set here right away is just because it's in our CSS style sheet doesn't mean that it actually updates it in the DOM per se. So I need to update that particular style of display to equal none when it first loads up, right? And then what I need to do is I need to, how did everything look, by the way? Edit in there. Did I not set a color for that button? Let's go set a color for that button here. First and foremost. Yeah, okay. There we go. Okay. So let's target this button in particular. So let's open edit details modal. Get element by ID. Open dash edit dash details dash modal. Okay, and then we're going to add an on-click event for that. So open edit details modal dot on click. It's funny, I said these weren't going to go more than an hour, but it's a little easier to do this extemporaneously, I suppose. Kind of chunking it off small bits at a time here. So open edit details modal dot on click, and then we want to open basically the details modal. So edit. So we'll create a, I guess we don't need to create an if statement to toggle. Edit details modal dot style dot display. And then we need to display that as a block type element. Okay. Then we need to target the close the details modal. Okay. So we'll say let close. Let's make sure that these actually line up within this modal. Close edit details modal. Okay. All right, and then we need to do close edit details modal dot on click again. And we'll say edit details modal dot style dot display will equal None. Okay, so let's see how this works for us here. So that's not opening anything for us. Just make sure that's targeting correctly. Open edit details modal. So the first thing I do if I find an error like this, like, hey, why isn't it opening or closing? I check the way I spelled everything. So edit details modal. Edit details modal. Okay, so that's correct. Okay. Let open edit details modal equals document.getElement by ID. Open edit details modal. Open dash edit dash details dash modal. So I mean that is correct. Oh, you know what? This is kind of silly. I don't actually need this up here. That still does not do anything for me. Edit details. So it's not even identifying that. No, it's not even pulling up the function. That is odd. So we know, okay, so I mean, as I'm troubleshooting this, I know that this file is getting some recognition there because this shows up with the loading of the page. You know what it is here? It's actually the console log. I'm going to move all of this. The body. JavaScript could sometimes be fickle like that. With the console.log being inside here, now everything else will work. If I call it before the onload of the rest of my document, then for some reason it's not working. But this will work now. So let's refresh that. And you can see that works. Okay. Now we want to add some other functionality in here. Like edit details modal. So let's see here. So edit details modal dot on click. Because when we click on that particular element, we want everything to close down, right? We'll say details modal dot style dot display. Equals none. So let's refresh that. Okay. But anywhere I end up clicking is not working. So we'll put something in there afterwards. Now I'm just going to use the X because it can. And we want to hook up basically the close edit details modal. And this is the last thing I'm going to do here for the night, for this lesson, because I am tired and I'm ready to go to bed. So actually, let's just copy and paste that. All right, so everything should work now. We open it up, we close it. Okay, we're in good shape. So, all right. Okay, so if you like this video, definitely like and subscribe. It definitely helps to motivate me to put out more of these for you guys as we build out the CRM. And if you have any input, you want to see some things added to the CRM, let me know too, because I can definitely show you how I go about adding things, say for example, after the CRM is built from there. So, all right, take care.